Damn, that was nice. Tails?
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye, Malcador. Hi, Malcador. I'm Isyander.
And I'm Coda.
And today we are going over the sketchiest person in the entire Imperium.
The absolute sketchiest guy.
Honestly, probably the sketchiest person in the galaxy. He's got a lot. There's a lot of contenders. There's a lot of contenders for that, so I will let you guys decide. You guys also get to decide the next video. Your options are the White Scars and the Raven Guard. So far, it's been neck and neck, with the White Scars always being the first comments. Really funny. But then, the Raven Guard will win out of nowhere. So, it's up to you guys to figure that out.
They're both playing by their themes, which is awesome.
It's fine. Ever since the beginning, I've been seeing Jagatai Khan and the White Scars as some of the first, if not the first comment. So, it couldn't play out better in my head.
And then the Raven Guard just come out of nowhere to assassinate that idea.
Well, I don't know. Maybe. We don't know yet. It's up to them to decide. We also have a bunch of bonus episodes on Patreon. You can also have a heavier vote over there and help us keep the show running, as well as a bunch of other perks. I'm talking Discord access. I'm talking community day streams. I'm talking perk after perk. It's probably the best value Patreon out there. And that's why we've buried our episodes on the Modern Custodies and Valdor. So if you want to go check those out and help us keep this show running, head on over to patreon.com/Isyander and Coda. Now let's get into the character who has always been to the left of the Emperor. Not in every piece of art, but
he's there somewhere.
He's the most consistent of the bunch.
He's there somewhere.
No, not even.
He's not in the final confrontation art, but that's because something else is happening.
Oh, we'll get to that.
We'll get into that.
It's one of the saddest things in all of 40k, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I saw this comment over and over and over again. And ever since Malcador was first mentioned, he just said, I don't know if you have, I don't know if you will, but you have to read the end and the death. You just have to. You have to, period. I've seen that comment everywhere. I've seen that person since the very beginning. So I did check it out. I did refresh myself. So worth it. So worth it. Dan Abnett, he did really close to crying. Really close to crying. Downside is, it's the end of the heresy, so you really can't start there. I can't recommend anyone start there. You are dumped into the end, the last chapter of this really compelling story.
Everything has already happened.
And there's a little bit of setup. You can get characters pretty well, but it's tough. It's tough. But regardless, it's one of the many places where you can hear a bunch about Malcador, and it's one of the saddest. But we'll get to that later. Today we're going to the happy portions, because they were buddy-buddy for a while, him and the Emperor. Whenever he needed to vent, to confide, to run a plan by someone, it was Malcador who was there. And you have to realize the magnitude of that, because listen, we've all had friends. I'm assuming you have friends. I have friends. It's how it works. I would hope you have friends. A key part of a good friendship is somebody who can keep up with you, you know? There's nothing more infuriating than I'm talking to you, I'm giving you idea after idea after idea, and it's a wet fish staring back at me.
Every so often it'll give a blub.
Yeah. Yeah, a good friend is somebody who challenges you to grow, somebody who you can't say, right, like neck and neck a little bit. There's a reason every video game ever has a rival. It's just the way it works, right? It's for guys specifically. I've noticed male friendship needs that almost not competitive edge to it per se, but you are who you surround yourself with.
It's the listen, I can kick your ass in MK. I can't.
He can't. That's a fact. He can't. I promise you that now. So the significance of me saying Malcador is the Emperor's friend in that regard cannot be understated. This is I don't want to call him a human. I don't know what else to call him, but he's something that the Chaos Gods have referred to as anathema. He is a being that has existed for thousands of years in so many different forms and has interacted with humans in 101 different ways. He's a guy who can punch through about 10 brick walls and still have 10 more to go without any problem. It's jarring how far beyond your average mortal the Emperor of Mankind is. And Malcador, who's just a guy, maybe, can keep up with him.
This person who is shaped like a human, but
well, I suppose we should get to where Malcador comes from to deal with that. He comes from a crew known as the Sigillites. That's why you hear Malcador the Sigillite.
The Sigillite.
Exactly. It's on the tin.
Yeah.
Their job was to safeguard, organize, and preserve memories of the past. It's a very fun gig. It's why I saw this piece of art of Malcador where he's got the Mona Lisa in the background. I think he has if memory serves, I could be wrong. I'm usually right on this. I think he has the Rosetta Stone.
The Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, not like the software, the actual thing.
I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
Just the software. Here's a copy of.
To be fair,
here's a 2003 copy of Rosetta Stone for Windows Vista.
To be fair, in 30K, that's kind of a relic now.
Oh yeah.
So it could be
relic,
that one.
It's a relic right now, which means 30,000 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, 28,000 years from now. Do some basic arithmetic.
30-ish thousand years.
Yeah,
from now.
Yes. So that's his whole gig, and that's where he comes from. That we know of. He was back with the Emperor back when he was just a warlord with a weird haircut. This was before don't get me wrong, he still appeared very divine. He still hit like he was very divine. There's no debate. He did the Unite Earth fairly fast. However, at the time, there was a window of time where the Emperor was like, I will conquer the galaxy and unite humanity. And everyone was like, okay. All right, buddy. You and what army? A worse question has never been asked.
Like I said, this is a man who's only human shaped. He's still what's going on under the hood.
Exactly. And so Malcador's always been there by his side, reminding him of the lessons other people have already fought and earned so that, he doesn't repeat the mistake. Like, hey, don't do that. Hannibal's already done that. That's his gig, at least in the very, very, very beginning. There were a bunch of Sigillites. There's only now one Sigillite. That is probably the Emperor's fault. I'll be honest. He's done a lot of he's eliminated quite a few things from the galaxy for his larger, grander vision. So the Sigillites, there's only one thing that really could have done them in, and that one thing is very relevant today. Mm-hmm. If the other Sigillites were as freaky as Malcador, as long-lived as Malcador, we may never know. Because, like I said, there's the one Sigillite. And so, for all intents and purposes, Malcador is kind of the last of his kind. This is also part of why he's so sketchy. He's really dodgy. There's a lot of shadow and mystery around him, which usually is in 40K, if there's shadow and mystery about something, it's because they want a model to come out at some point. I'll be real. Like, a lot of the time, it's like, this figure has vanished mysteriously and may return someday. It's going to come back.
They're going to announce a model, and it's going to sell a lot.
Yeah, it pretty much sell out immediately. This one is not that. Malcador as a person needs to be sketchy. He needs to be sketchy. And so having his backstory shrouded in mystery, we're never going to get a Malcador model. That's just not... Let me be real with you. We're never going to get one. Ever. That's why you don't see him in a lot of the Emperor's art, because a lot of the Emperor's art is him in combat or about to be in combat. And frankly, Malcador can hold his own, but that's not his strength.
No, not one.
You'll see Valdor in that art a lot. You'll see a bunch of custodians in that art a lot. You won't see Malcador very often.
Malcador is a sketchy guy in a trench coat.
And so that's why his...
You need to be worried more that he's going to pop open the trench coat and show you something you don't want to see today, more than he's going to whip a sword out or a gun out and mug you.
Yes. Everything about him is duplicitous. Even his age doesn't... He looks very old. He does. There are several times in the story he does not move like he's old. There are also several times in the story where he does move like he's old. So it's really tough to tell. Everything about him, his past specifically, and his true nature, is so up in the air it could escape our atmosphere at any moment. It's really, really weird.
I've seen art pieces where he looks like he's just tossed something, and it's like a full toss. And then I've also seen art where he's just gripping onto his staff as if that's the only thing supporting him.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to his physicality too later. That'll become relevant. It'll actually become very relevant. So put a pin in that. For now, the main things people contest are that A, he's a sensei, which if you say that Malcador is a sensei, I know immediately you have a few gray hairs. I'm joking. But it is pretty old lore. It's pretty much retconned at this point. They were the Emperor's kids by blood, not by test tube or weird warp chicanery like the Primarchs. Fully related to the Emperor in every way. And if you look at the Emperor, yeah, it looks like you could start a hair metal band at any moment, but that works for some people. So him having kids is not the most outlandish thing. Plus, I'll be honest, a lot of modern emperor art is him as a skeleton on the throne. There are plenty of artists who have taken it upon themselves to modernize him, let's
Furnish
call it.
his assets.
I'll stick with modernize him. And whichever variant you subscribe to, moral of the story is, if he wanted to have kids, he could. So it's a thing, but it's not a thing that's really relevant anymore. A lot of the themes from the Sensei are still around, but you have to remember, this is old 40k. The Illuminati was present. The Illuminati was an active thing. They just had Oprah Winfrey running around.
I'd love to see an interaction between Oprah Winfrey and the God of Perm.
I love the Illuminati allegations because it's always you're fine, you're normal, and then you get too wealthy and it's Illuminati immediately. Ugh. No shot. Regardless, that's one possibility. Another is, you know, the way the Emperor himself is also shrouded in a ton of mystery. We're not sure what his real nature is. One of those theories is he's 12 shaman in a trench coat. The theory around Malcador is there was a 13th shaman
who didn't get shoved in the trench coat.
Who couldn't fit in the trench coat, frankly, and now he's running around. Again, that's pretty old. It's dubious at best.
Yeah.
But some people do think that. And the more canon, the more modern one is he's just a perpetual. They're people who live forever.
They just don't die.
It's on the name.
They don't die.
Yeah, except he got like eternal life, not eternal youth, which is, you got to read the fine print, my guy.
Yeah, that can become a curse very quickly.
Yeah, and so that's the more modern way. A lot of the Sensei stuff got rolled into perpetuals, actually. They cleaned it up, reworked it. So that's what we have for now. Games Workshop is not above changing things, I'll say that. So as of this recording, that's what we have. It could change in a year, it could change in 2. We could find out the Sensei are relevant, and I'm going to eat my words.
Well, when your lore has been going for 30, 40 odd years straight, things are going to shift as writers go,
And honestly, I like the enigma, specifically around those two, because those two work best if they are almost unfathomable. And so that's why I'm okay with it.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
That's what those two.
That's what those two are in a nutshell.
They're just saying to each other over and over. These guys were so in sync, it's unfunny. They were so in lockstep together. If Malcador made an order and the Emperor didn't tell him to do it, the Emperor would hear that and go, "Yeah, of course, do that."
Yeah.
That I would tell you to do that. So when Malcador spoke, yeah, you listened. You listened. He basically spoke with the voice of the Emperor because a lot of the time, he was just like they'd psychically speak to each other across. So he would just be speaking with the Emperor's voice. If not, he's the only being about as smart as him. So you still should probably listen to him. Which
says a lot, because there's not a lot of people in my friend group who I'd trust to make absolute decisions for me.
Mm-hmm. That's why.
That says a lot. And I'm just like a guy. I'm a person, not somebody shaped like a person who is the size of 9 of me and can like light up the sky as a lighthouse for an entire galaxy.
The Emperor is canon described having radiance that hurts to look at, and lightning arcing off of him at times. He's a figure that's incomprehensible by nature. He's so powerful that all 4 Chaos Gods had to look directly at him to just cripple him. Now, to be fair, people debate whether they wanted to kill him or not, because the current setting sucks real bad. Maybe this was the plan all along. Regardless, he survived. That still says a lot.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes, and Malcador, the guy-ish,
it speaks volumes.
Can keep up with him.
Yeah, it speaks volumes that the guy-ish can keep up with him and he's like on the same level as him.
Exactly, which brings up a very valid point. If 2 of the 3 vaguely canon theories around Malcador are he's related to the Emperor in some way, he has to be a menace. He has to be menace. And he definitely is. He punches so far above his weight. It genuinely makes the Primarchs uncomfortable.
I mean, think about it. Look at the Emperor and everybody he surrounds himself with. They're all really tall. Look at Malcador. Mm-hmm. He's keeled over, holding onto a staff like it's the only thing holding him up, and he holds up to all of them.
He holds up. No, he surpasses a lot of them.
Yeah.
He's got a unique place by the Emperor's side. This guy, you look at him. Oh, it's an old wizard. Okay, cool. He makes a moon disappear into the warp, and Nobody else can do that, really.
I mean, really.
At least not as easily as he seemed to.
Everybody else is just casting testicular torsion. He's casting moon disappear.
Yeah, and that's just what he does with his wizardry. The other big thing is that mind. Because a lot of the institutions that are still holding up the Imperium today, for good and for bad, were by his direct hand. Because there's some fights that required the Emperor. There were some things the Emperor had to do, so he wasn't always micromanaging the Imperium. A lot of the time, the Emperor was he was like royalty, and Malcador was like the Prime Minister, where he's actually running the day-to-day, but there's somebody above him. There's somebody he reports to, and there's somebody who could, in theory, on paper, just come down and do the job too. So his mind, his work ethic, the amount of stress he took on while managing the whole Imperium, and it wasn't just managing, because that's really difficult, but managing is underselling it, because he was building it.
Yeah, managing is just like, okay, I'm keeping this as is. This is running fine. But this is just like, let's build upon this. Let's create more stuff. Let's do more with this. How can we grow this?
The Inquisition comes from him. The Assassins come from him. A ton of the bureaucracy in the Imperium comes from him. And he did all of that without losing a single hair, which made Horus so jealous.
They went gray, though.
Yeah, in all his art, he seems to be gray. In all his art. So I don't think it was the stress that did it.
Do you think he was born gray?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a Benjamin Button situation. I really wouldn't be surprised. What matters is, I'm only partially kidding about it chafing Horus. The hair didn't, but Malcador's existence did chafe Horus a bit.
Well, really? Did the hair not do it?
No. They had a very weird relationship. A lot of the Primarchs in Malcador specifically have a very weird relationship. Because Horus, pre-heresy, was really likable. He was really kind. But this was an effort. It was something he was trying to do. He would put himself out there. He would talk to all of his brothers. He would listen to them. He would be very amicable. Malcador at first fell for this, but eventually saw through and saw the insecurity at his core that would wind up eating everything that everyone loves very dearly, putting them in a real weird spot. This insecurity would flare up a lot around, once really badly around Malcador, because he's the embodiment of this insecurity. Because Malcador is a guy with the highest kill streak against any Primarchs. That's not a joke. There's a picture I have pulled up of you. If you could pull that up, and you'll see his chair. You'll see his chair.
Pull up figure 1.1.
Yes, and it'll be up on screen too. But you have to remember, the first one is Kurz, because Kurz was killed by the hand of an assassin, which was something he created, right? So that's one.
That's one.
And then zoom in on his armrest, please, on that chair.
I've already noticed something very key about this chair.
Have you noticed the numbers on the...
I have noticed the numbers of the chair.
What numbers
and I have noticed that they are the numbers that correspond directly with the missing numbers on the Primarch chart.
Yep. So that puts his numbers at 3, maybe.
Or 4.
Or 4. Or 4. Could be unfortunate. But moral of the story is, even if you don't want to count Kurz, because I'll be fair, that is an extension of Malcador. It's still something he created. It's still a machine that he made that eventually wound up crushing that orphan. So,
and I'll give Kurz fans some credit.
He did let it happen.
That's
the first thing everyone ever says. He let it happen, but you also have to remember, his sons didn't let it happen. The assassin had to get through them. So
yeah. Yeah.
And they did get vengeance, so it's a tough thing to call a win, because that poor assassin was hunted by the Night Lords for the rest of their short life. It wasn't fun. But moral of the story is, that is a fact about Malcador that is already off-putting enough. It's already very off-putting. And then Malcador is put in charge of this council of other humans, and one of the first things they do is they start ripping down statues of Primarchs, specifically the 2 missing ones. Which does not go over well with Horus.
No?
Oh, no, not at all. Because by this time, their names have already been stricken from the record. Like, it doesn't make it into the...
It's over. They're gone. They didn't even exist.
bodes horribly for us. Their names are fully expunged, and by the Emperor's own order, you cannot say them. It is a crime just to say them.
It's a thought crime just to think about them.
It's not that bad, but it's still pretty tough. And so Malcador goes about doing, his duty, and it's like, well, let's get rid of the statues. Let's just forget about them altogether. And from Horus's perspective, oh man, is that weird? Because the Primarchs are very powerful. They still have petulant human emotions. That is a thing. That's one of the big reasons that causes the heresy problem. Imagine if you were so powerful, it was genuinely hard to find anyone to teach you anything or for you to train against. You were so powerful that you would show up to a fight and turn it just by issuing a few orders. And the only person above you is your actual father, who is leagues more powerful than you, and that's it. Everyone below you is human. And then, out of nowhere, instead of, the Crusade's over, I'm going to be in charge now, obviously, because I know best, your dad starts setting up measures that make it look like humans are going to be in charge of you. And then he starts erasing your brothers, who were lateral throws from you.
What are you guys going to do to me?
Horus went from thinking he will be the one who writes history to the sad realization that he's just the pen. And that understandably really screws with him, because if two Primarchs can be erased from history, all the good they did, along with the horrible thing they did, that can happen to me too. And this culminates in him confronting Malcador about this, and he's really getting amped up because he's in his feelings right now. And again, the Primarchs are people. They can get emotional. And to get a rise out of Malcador, he almost says their names, and before the air can leave his lungs, it is stopped. As Horus's whole body is held in place, and Malcador has an old familiar grin return. Yeah. And right then and there, Malcador tells him, if you finish that sentence, I will unmake you. And this is not an empty threat. Horus cannot move. His brothers have to intervene and tell Malcador, hey, uncle, please, whoa, it's not Korea anymore, please. Like, in that moment, it looks like, oh my God, he's just going to have a new headrest. Malcador is just going to make himself a new headrest with Horus's number on it.
I really like the verbiage of unmake, because it's just like, I was around to create you, and I can take you out too. Yeah, I can unmake you.
It's the parental, I brought you into this world, and you hear a belt crack, I can take you out of it. And he says that to a demigod, by the way. Yeah. And the demigod can't do anything about it.
No.
He, physically, Horus, who at this point has probably not been overpowered by anything but his own brothers, is suddenly held in place by someone who's not even half his size. And his brothers have to whoa, please, let's take it down several notches. He did not mean it. He was not going to say it. I swear. And in that moment, you can very easily see why some people blame the seeds of the heresy being sown by Malcador. Because he was an uncle figure to the Primarchs. He was the only person close to dad in any way. And instead of seeing what Horus was in that moment, which is a child scared of being replaced,
instead of comforting him,
he saw him as a general stepping out of line.
Yeah.
And
he put him back in his place.
This, I'm not joking, caused Horus to spiral and learn everything he could about Malcador. Not a joke. Not a joke. Including maybe Malcador's true name, which I would pronounce, but it requires the back of the throat, and I'm sick. It's Arabic. It'll be on screen at some point. I think it's Arabic. I'm not sure. Moral of the story is, this is a moment that stuck with Horus, like glue. It was pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
Which, so funny. So funny that Malcador can say that he has traumatized the Primarch.
Not as funny that he may have been the progenitor of the Horus Heresy, but, You take what you can.
And this is doubled down by the fact that the Emperor had other super soldiers too. The Thunder Warriors were running around. They had their own Primarchs running around too. How did they all die mysteriously at the very end? Do you see the pit Horus found himself in? I could so see myself getting in there too.
They had what before us?
Yeah.
Who orchestrated their downfall?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And this is a consistent thread too in Malcador the Hero's life. Primarchs kind of step up to him a lot. Primarchs, he's a man in the presence of gods, and he's being treated as equals, except these guys don't see it that way. And so on the very, very lightest end, you get some bickering, you get some subtle jabs, like, oh, here's Malcador, let me shake his hand about as hard as I could shake Dad's. Or, oh, this is Malcador, whoops, I got the dad-sized chair, my bad, let me go get the tiny one. It's said by Malcador that at one time or another, all the Primarchs have exerted their strength in his presence. It's something they seem to enjoy doing because his guess is they're resentful of the privileged place he has to the left of their father.
Listen, if I was, how tall are they? They're like 9 or 10 feet tall.
Malcador's half their size. That's just imagine someone half your size.
Yeah, if I was like 10 feet tall, if I was 10, 12 feet tall, I would probably be a little bit heated that my dad's picking somebody who's half my size and like scrawny over me when it comes to like any sort of planning, any sort of big planning. Mm-hmm. Listen, I am half god. Guy, that is just a guy. What do you mean he's going to be what? No.
And that's a key thing there. It's a thought that Malcador has. All the Primarchs, even the nice ones. That means Vulcan probably gave him a hug a little bit too hard.
Vulcan forged him a hammer. Oh, shoot.
Mm-hmm.
That's dad-sized, isn't it? Well, I'll help you put it up in your room.
And to be fair to the Primarchs, too, think about it from their perspective. If, let's say you got the Khan's speed, I'd be using it for dumb things, too. Oh, there's a guest at the door 30 feet away. Let me blink over there and shake their hand real quick and then blink back.
See, that'd be me.
Right? It's yep. Human. We totally, or, oh, I'm playing chess against my little brother, and, oh, man, is he winning? And I have Horus's mind? Let me put him in check in every possible timeline.
You start playing, what is it, 4D or a hyperdimensional chess?
Hyperdimensional chess with time travel. It's a real game. Very confusing.
But on one single board.
Yeah, it's the universal playing a fighting game with a sibling, and then you lean forward. They talk a little bit too much and you lean forward. But that's at its lightest, right? Mm-hmm. Malcador's gotten it pretty bad. That's them just being petulant children, basically. The worst offenders are Lorgar and Mortarion. Mortarion straight up strangled him.
Oh.
And Lorgar smacked him so hard he shattered bones.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that might be why he has a little bit of a Cain situation happening there.
You'd think. Fun fact, that's probably the closest those two have come to true death. Because, and I will make this argument all day, every day. Because the first thing is when this Primarch closes the distance between them and immediately wraps his hand around Malcador's throat, everyone would be thinking, oh God, how do I get out of this situation? Malcador is thinking, how much force can I apply here without just making this worse?
Oh.
That is because the reason he strangles them is they're having an argument over psykers, witches. Mortarion's a big hypocrite. It'll all come up in a different episode. Yeah. Moral of the story is he's big mad at psykers. Malcador's a huge psyker, and so his exact thought process is, I could stop this, but he really hates psykers. And if I used that to stop this, like, how far am I willing to get strangled almost is the thought process here. And even if you don't subscribe to the fact that he could kill a Primarch, because some people don't, and it's a fair assumption, how do you think the Emperor would react?
Oh, if you killed who?
You killed his one friend.
Yeah.
So I don't care whether you think Malcador could kill a Primarch or not. If a Primarch killed Malcador,
They're not getting away with it.
they were so dead. There's nothing that would stop the fury that would... You'd be an example. And my favorite one of this is Lorgar, because that's what happened to him. Because when this happened is... It's first of all, very well written scene. Lorgar he's a televangelist's final form. He has this beautiful city, all worshipping the Emperor, and the Emperor, not a fan of that. He's a violent atheist. He hates it. So he sends Malcador and Guilliman to burn it all to the ground, teach him a lesson. Lorgar sees this and is furious. He's asking, why are you doing this? And Guilliman is just there staring at him, completely neutral, just kind of stone-facing him.
It's like, listen, I was just sent to do my job.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, he hits Guilliman first, and Guilliman just asks, are you done with your tantrum yet? To be fair, a lot of other Primarchs would have immediately smacked Lorgar back for that, so he sent the right guy.
Guilliman was, in fact, stone-facing.
Yeah. And when Lorgar is asking him, why are you doing this? And, by the way, Primarch's fury is universally described as being horrifying to experience. So Lorgar is kind of losing it. His composure is still there. Lorgar is described as being handsome multiple times. He looks like the Emperor, apparently. But the visage, his face, he's smiling, but it's deranged. It's like he's trying really hard not to let the fury out, but every Ultramarine can tell, and they're all tense.
It's the has-been hotel DeviantArt like Joker moment. I'm smiling, but am I smiling?
Kind of.
Yeah.
And it's so terrifying that even the Ultramarines, the perfect formation, we must paint everything in Ultramarine blue. That is everything we have to do. They're like breaking formation a bit and raising their guns and going, what do we do if he loses it?
What's coming next?
There are only two people who are perfectly calm, and it's Guilliman and Malcador in this scene. And when Guilliman just answers, I was ordered to, which is not the answer Lorgar wanted. And so he turns to... And I love the way that line is delivered, too, because it's described as... Guilliman is so neutral. People have heard automata that sound more empathic than he does in this moment.
Damn.
He delivers that line the same way you say, I crushed a bug. There's no emotion in his voice about it at all. This is just, I was told to do this.
There was a spider.
There was a spider. And this really winds Lorgar up. And Malcador has always felt for Lorgar. If there's one person he could save, it would have been Lorgar. So he's trying to explain, like, no, you did a good job here. It was really good. The problem is they were worshipping him as a god, and that's not what...
We don't want that kind of worship.
And he's trying to tell this to him, and Lorgar is just constantly cutting him off. And the hero is still holding his ground the whole time, trying to explain this as Lorgar is approaching, saying, why? And finally he snaps and bats Malcador away. Lorgar is wearing full power armor and is twice his size.
Yeah.
Sends him flying.
Yeah, of course.
There is a wet noise, and for a moment there, everyone fears that he just died.
I would twice his size, full power armor, full force, pa.
And Malcador is just wearing the robes you see him in.
Yeah.
That's it. But after a few moments, you just see Malcador get up, dust himself off, hold out his hand, and his staff flies to it like Mjolnir. And then he looks to the heavens, and everyone in their heads can hear, he will not listen. Not to me, my lord. And Guilliman automatically looks at the ground as a radiant light burns everything, and the Emperor of Mankind makes his presence known.
He's just like, listen, he won't listen to me. Direct line to the Emperor.
Yeah. Do you see what I mean? That is the argument, and I will make this argument any day of the week. The moment they laid hands on Malcador, I don't care if they fought Nurgle himself. That's the closest they got to death. That is the closest they got removed. Because the Emperor won't just kill you. You'll be removed from every timeline.
Your soul is gone.
Yeah, it's... And so I love that scene too, because they have a way they denote when they're talking in their heads, and I just love the way it's just, he will not listen, not to me, my lord. And then Guilliman automatically looks,
like, okay, I'm gonna get blinded.
Yeah, this is all gonna be blinding. But that's all pre-heresy. You haven't even gotten to the heresy yet. Yeah, he's done a lot. He's done quite a bit.
If I had a nickel for every time you have said, we haven't even gotten to the heresy yet, I would have 2 nickels, which is not a lot. But, both times have been jarring.
He's a very busy dude. The guy has to be mainlining Red Bull. There's no way he's this consistent without it.
I don't see the wings.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll give you that. During the heresy, he had a lot to do, but it's a lot we've already discussed. Managing the day-to-day of the Imperium, preparing its defenses, helping oversee and manage when the Emperor was busy fixing the black hole Magnus opened somewhere in the Imperium. The Emperor had a lot of work to do. I actually really love this. One of the things Malcador does is he plays these he's wargaming out the heresy with the Emperor. And it's a really fun and touching scene because you can see them play, and this is I love this so much because the only reason he's wargaming it out with Malcador is he's the only one who can play well enough. And so they play out the heresy in every possible combination, and it winds up with the Emperor having to berate Malcador, calling him a fool and nothing but a tool, just to get him angry enough to play as well as Horus can. I mean, and by the way, we've done this on a Patreon episode. It's really mean stuff. There's a lot of people. It changes how people see the Emperor and Malcador's relationship because of how vicious and cold he is. But in that moment, the Emperor doesn't need a friend. He needs somebody trying to kill him. I need to think this through in every possible way that I can.
He needed Malcador to not just to lean forward. He needed Malcador to whip out a mouse and keyboard.
That's exactly right. And so that's a lot of what Malcador is doing throughout the heresy, is he's supporting the Emperor. And even his last deed is doing that. The deed that changed his name from the Sigillite to the Hero. And that is sitting on the golden throne in the Emperor's place and keeping it running while the Emperor went off to end the heresy. This is an act that would burn Malcador out in his entirety. I'm not joking. He's ashes.
Yeah.
Very few characters are as dead as Malcador. And it is also an act that makes me incredibly weepy whenever I read it. Because Malcador's impressive. We haven't even covered the half of it, by the way. I've had to cut a lot of things. But the Emperor of mankind is something even further beyond that. One of the biggest problems the Emperor has is convincing people that he's not a god. That's the level that he's operating at. This is a guy whose hands have been described as being so firm, I'm sure they could mold the galaxy itself. Like, it's very, very, very big shoes. It's a striking figure who casts a shadow so long and so dark, it's taken the Imperium 10,000 years and billions upon billions of dead to not even live up to it. Not even close. And Malcador, a human, will sit on a machine meant for that. It's
not because he wants to, not because he thinks he can, but because he knows he's the only one who can try.
Yeah. And one of the most heartbreaking things is before this, the Emperor's on the throne. He's doing a lot of things. I'm talking, he's from the throne, and he's described as doing a million things at once, from inspiring people on a battlefield to helping keep things duct taped here on Earth. He's constantly working, and Malcador is constantly trying to reach out to him. And there's this touching scene where Malcador manages to get to wherever the Emperor is. It's a different plane of understanding, and offers him a bottle of water. Like, just, dude, you've been going at this for a minute.
Do you need a sippy?
Yeah. And the Emperor's like, thank you. Don't come here again. This is unimaginably dangerous. Do not do that again. I will arrive when I arrive. And so this whole time you can hear Malcador thinking through the relationship. And it's presented as a funeral procession almost, with a few loyalist Primarchs there helping him up the stairs, because you've seen the art. There's a lot of stairs to get to that chair.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stairs. And This is one of the points where Malcador's age is showing. Like, he almost falls and he has to be caught. And it's so sad because everyone in the room knows what's about to happen. Everyone. And nobody wants to say it. Even the custodies who are taking him up, because the way it works is the Primarchs take him up a few stairs, then it's a whole funeral procession. Then the custodies, and then finally he goes up the last few to meet the Emperor himself. And the whole time as he's doing this, the room is being described as full of light. That radiance the Emperor always puts out. Just blinding in every way. And as Malcador is approaching, you're just seeing sigils leaving him like a swarm of angry bees. It's a mess. It's imperfect. It's barely decipherable. He's leaving notes everywhere on everything so that maybe a brighter mind can carry on his work.
Somebody, anybody, please read my notes and figure out what I was trying to do.
He's reaching out to a few people mentally that he's chosen to continue what he's been doing. He's just 100 commands are leaving every second from Malcador. And the entire time, one of my favorite ones that he does is he inscribes a little sigil on a custodian's armor. And I guess there's something that gets on it at some point during the fight. And so, take that off. I got to clean it. And he's like, no, this is a sigil from Malcador. He told me to keep it until I brought the Emperor back. This armor's not leaving me. So he can even get the custody sentimental.
Yeah.
And this whole time, as he's hoping for a brighter mind to continue his work, the brightest mind in the room is ignoring all of it and staring at one person. There's no multitasking from the Emperor, who's been doing so many things at once. There is no regarding even his sons in the room or the custodies. He's only looking at this friend who he's had discussions with late at night for centuries now. I mean, it's millennia at this point. He was present, ready and capable for all of the Emperor's work. Down to when they first discovered the Golden Throne and figured out, I'm the only one who can operate this, to the night when they figured out, maybe you could. I mean, the Emperor created a son, Magnus, who was powerful enough to sit on the chair to avoid this reality. And it still came to pass. It's so heartbreaking.
It's heart-wrenching.
And in that moment, he lets Malcador into his head, and all Malcador can feel is sorrow. And he has to tell the Emperor quietly so nobody else can hear, don't be sad. Yeah. And as he escorts Malcador up to the last step, this person who's been there since back when it looked like a pipe dream up until now. And I mean, it wasn't just Malcador's presence that the Emperor is going to miss, but his input. Because up until this point, I have deliberately called him the Emperor, not the Master of Mankind, not, I suppose, Neoth, I guess. None of that. It's the Emperor. And that's because that's not a name he chose for himself. It was Malcador who helped him figure that out. Yeah. He's the reason we call him Big E. He's the guy who had that idea and realized that whether you like divinity or not, it works really well for uniting people. And so if you come off as this figure, it will help things move along quicker, no matter how much you hate it. And so as he's taking him up there, the excerpt ends with, I am old, I am tired, I sit on the golden throne. And that's it.
And that's it.
Yeah. And that is why this episode is probably going to be one of the longer ones, because I could not read that and then curtail it all. It almost has to be there, because in that moment, the Emperor changes it from Malcador the Sigillite to Malcador the Hero. And that is how it is to be remembered for the rest of time. Because he didn't do this out of duty. He didn't do this out of, I shall serve the Imperium of man. He did this for a friend. And as the heresy goes on, and as it's closing, listen, the Golden Throne is a wacky thing. It's a very powerful thing. There's this vaguely canon image I love of Malcador's time on the throne. I think I have it up there for you. And it's him holding a barrier against just all four Chaos Gods bearing down on him. Canon, not at all. Does it do a good job of showing how difficult that gig is? Yeah, I think so. So it gets the emotion across. Stop zooming in on Slaanesh.
I'm trying to read what her shirt says.
Stop zooming in on Slaanesh.
I'm trying. Listen, I can read. Nurgle is reading Gardener's Warp magazine, and Korn is just screaming. Zinch is like desperately pounding on the door. Just let me in, let me in, let me in. And I'm trying to read. Does that say Sigillite #1?
Hey, Slaanesh would try and get in through charm, I suppose. Regardless, it's
1001 courtly plots and intrigues.
Oh God, I shouldn't have shown
Made
you.
for.
I shouldn't have shown you that picture.
No.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, that is awful. Slaanesh has got tattoos all over her that are like named. It's like made for Malcador.
That's horrific.
That's horrific.
We are gonna keep going. So as he's doing this duty, it's described as him finally getting to see things the way the Emperor does from this. You're looking at creation, basically. You're looking at the source code.
Yeah.
And as everyone's getting ready for the closing act of the heresy, the most heart-wrenching stuff is the Primarchs can feel Malcador holding up the throne, but they can also feel cell by cell he's dying. And Dorn mentions that he feels this unimaginable sorrow leaving Malcador, and Sanguinius, I believe it was, is the one to correct him and go, that's not coming off of Malcador. And he looks just right at Dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is how much he is shattered by having to lose his friend. And that's why I've never ascribed to the whole he sees Malcador as a tool thing. Because if he saw Malcador as a tool, he would not be so sad. Others can feel it.
Well, think about it this way as well. If the Primarchs are able to feel Malcador disintegrating cell by cell, imagine what the Emperor is feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine your one friend, the one person who has kept up. You've had this friend since elementary school. You've kept them until you're like in your 60s. And you can feel them atom by atom just disappearing from this world.
And in a way that can never be brought back.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people debate when an entire bucket of it hit the fan. I like to think it was the moment Malcador touched that chair, because it was all downhill from there. That is what began the spiral into the darkest, most brutal regime imaginable today. Because you know how the heresy ends. The Emperor's effectively dead and wounded, and he's interred on the chair as Malcador is removed, more like dusted out of it, really. It's not great.
Yeah.
But the most heartbreaking thing is, in as they're interring the Emperor onto the throne, he realizes that Malcador, the whole time, was still holding back a portion of his power to give to his friend the moment he got back, in case the worst happened. That way he could give his last orders. And so the only reason we have the Emperor's last words is because Malcador held it just a little bit back for the Emperor to have.
Just to donate to the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Isn't it a gut punch and a half?
Yeah. Oh.
Right?
Because who knows, if he would have full sent, he might not have been dust.
Well, that chair's a brutal thing. It's described as being painful for the Emperor. So I'm not sure if he would have made it out after that, but it's still impressive. It's still commendable.
Yeah. He was only giving 80% ass. He had 20% left to save.
Mm-hmm. Who knows? Moral of the story is, by the end of the heresy, multiple brothers... The tragedy of the heresy is it's a family shattered beyond belief. Their uncle is dead. Their dad is perpetually on a CPAP machine. And a good chunk of them are dead and or missing afterwards. And that's where the hero's story ends. As far as we know, again, Games Workshop could change this, but that's kind of it.
My immediate, listen, I want the story to have a happy ending. Please, please, please give me a happy ending. Is let his soul be somewhere stored in the Golden Throne and like either unbottleable, like we can maybe get him out of there somehow, or like he's chilling with the Emperor, just vibing in, but I mean...
That's just the beginning of the tragedy for the Emperor, by the way.
Yeah.
Because now he's, and I love it too, because one of the moments we have of Malcador when he's still living and he's thinking is how he's thinking through the fact that the Emperor hates the Emperor visage. He's seen whatever the hell Big E is under all of that in every form imaginable. You've seen him a guy. It's described, I believe the direct quote is, you've seen him as a man, a woman, in between. You've seen him as a clown. You've seen him as a mage. He's seen him as everything possible. He's seen him contort himself to whatever visage would work the best. And one of his least favorites is the visage of the Emperor, the master of mankind. And I can't help but feel so bad for whatever is left of him on the throne that is now stuck eternally alone, eternally incomprehensible, but still intelligent enough to realize the only way out of this is if I full send and just become a deity, I guess.
The thing I didn't want to be.
I confirm the thing I burned my kid's art project over. Like, the Emperor's, he's a really sad figure when you get to it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, he's got a bunch of cool art. It really seems like, man, that seems like the life. It's not.
Listen, we have all of this art of the Emperor that just like in all of his glory, golden armor, sword of flame, just halo, actual halo behind his head, leading everybody to victory. But nobody really realizes that that is mostly a ruse. That's mostly a ruse. He's just a guy.
Only Malcador knew him like that.
Yeah.
And Valdor, I believe Valdor says, oh God, I want this direct quote, but he basically says, yet another thing from the past is gone, something we're never going to get back when Malcador dies. It's...
Because I figure he was saying that a lot to Malcador, considering Malcador's whole job at first was keep the things from the past from going bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. It's even one of the things Malcador thinks, though, again, this isn't confirmed, these are just his thoughts, are part of why the Emperor kept up the visage of the Emperor is it's the easiest thing for his sons to relate to, too. Because think about it from a kid's perspective. I'm very powerful. I grew up 5 times faster than everyone around me. I'm infinitely smarter than everyone around me. And then some regular guy says he's my dad. Now, the Emperor of Mankind says he's my dad. Okay, well, that makes sense.
That makes more sense.
Look at me, clearly. And so it gets even more tragic when you consider the only family he has doesn't even really know him. And the one living relative he has, Guilliman, kinda hates him as a father. Guilliman is a good enough administrator to realize he's a great figurehead, awful father. And I think that's the real tragedy of Malcador. It shows just how empty and isolated the Emperor becomes at the very end.
Because he's no longer being seen by anybody other than the like we said, the image he hates. He's just like, he's no longer whoever he was before. He's no longer Big E the man. He is now Big E the Big E.
Mm-hmm. And he has to play this role.
Has to.
He has to be there and deliver miracles for sisters. Otherwise, everything's going to fall apart. So sure, I'm divine, I guess.
Which has to be not even like just mentally tasking, but emotionally tasking as well.
Mm-hmm. But that does wrap up the life and times of Malcador the Hero. There were a bunch of fun facts I did not and could not fit into this episode because they deserve their own. I mentioned a little bit about how he's got a bunch of weird relics in his office, like the Mona Lisa and stuff. I mentioned him speaking to the Emperor psychically, no matter where, no matter what. I did not really get into all the sketchy things that Malcador knew. This one definitely deserves its own episode, but moral of the story is Malcador was still human. Malcador knew way too much and needed someone to vent at, so he made a hybrid Eldar human twink that he just vent at night, and then the thing would just take a leap every single time, and so he just kept cloning it and telling it over and over and over again, just a vent, because even Malcador needed something. It has a whole story in and of itself. There's a lot to Malcador.
Listen, Malcador. I'm sure with all of the ancient relics you found, you watched Rick and Morty. You could have just made a Meeseeks. Why did you specifically make a human Eldar twink?
To be fair, the specific reason was when he found the Eldar, he found a kindred mind. He found something that could keep up with him. Which, think about it. That's why the Emperor valued Malcador so much. So if Malcador can keep up with the Emperor, then it stands to reason that Malcador has a hard time finding people who can keep up with him.
Yeah.
And so that's why it took that specific form of a wayfish Eldar. That's a story in and of itself for another day. There's a lot to Malcador, so much. And part of the problem with it is it's scattered. It's in almost every book.
Well, I mean, think about it. Just emblematic of how he took his last steps. All of this is like, I need to get this out now. I write this down somewhere. And I imagine it just went all over the place when they were cleaning up. Mm-hmm.
Regardless, though, that does...
He just left a bunch of Post-it notes all over the place. And
he was
just
a workaholic to the end. Of course his office was like that.
Mm-hmm. When somebody needed to come through to clean them up, they didn't know which order the Post-it notes were supposed to be in. Mm-hmm. He didn't put them in chains, unfortunately.
No, it reminds me of like Einstein's desk after he passed, where it just looks like, yeah, you definitely figured out quantum mechanics there. You definitely did, buddy. I believe it. There's a lot of paper present.
It looks like your average teenager's desk when you walk in after like an all-night bender.
No, because there's order to it.
And there's less cereal bowls, I imagine.
Exactly. There's none of that. But that does bring an end to the episode on Malcador the Hero. Your options are the White Scars and the Raven Guard. So sneaky, I almost forgot there. Make yourselves heard in the comments. And I do apologize if my voice was slightly off this episode. I'm sick.
Well, the start of sick is coming.
I am old. I am tired. I sit at this chair. And I will see
I sit on the patent leather dining chair.
Exactly. Yeah, we MacGyver. That's what we do. As always, thank you for watching, and thank you for being you.